Or is this full-time MMA now?
I love full-time MMA right now.
Full-time MMA? Nothing else.
My life, man, yeah.
Back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
Alexander Gustafsson fires back at Daniel Cormier, and he's putting multiple fighters on notice after DC hopped on Twitter and decided to play maybe just a little bit of matchmaker. This is what DC had to say on Twitter. Since Luke Rockhold can't fight, you know who Alexander Gustafsson can fight? Win or lose, I say get him in there with Yoel Romero. Let's see this #1 contender fight. Look at matchmaker DC coming through, and I like the sound of it, I'm not gonna lie. Yoel Romero versus Alexander Gustafsson. I mean, the light heavyweight division hasn't really had shit shaking for a little while, with it being tied up with like 3 teammates in the top 5. We had like Ela Latifi, Jimmy Manuwa, and Alexander Gustafsson all in that top 5, and they're teammates, so they didn't really want to fight each other. But also on top of that, we got the champion Daniel Cormier fighting in a champion versus champion super fight at heavyweight. So the light heavyweight division is just a little jammed up at this point. But with that being said, we've had talks of Luke Rockhold, former UFC middleweight champion, coming up and fighting Gustafsson in a #1 contender fight. Well, since then, we've had Luke Rockhold. He's had surgery on his leg, so he's out. He's unable to fight. But you know who is able to fight likely? The guy that just knocked out Luke Rockhold, Yoel Romero. Now that would actually be a good fight between Yoel Romero and Alexander Gustafsson, and Alexander Gustafsson responded on Twitter. Even though DC's playing matchmaker, he said, hey, I like the sound of it. This is actually his words. Just because the boss, DC, said so, let's do it, Yoel. Obviously, both of you have difficulties making weight. Yo, taking a jab at both DC and Yoel Romero, who have missed weight before. You know, DC Tailgate, Yoel Romero missed weight by 0.2 pounds in his most recent fight. But one of the things at play here that I thought about was, Luke Rockhold is one of Daniel Cormier's teammates, right? And that's who was going to be fighting Gustafsson. Now, there's a little bit of a grudge there between, you know, Daniel Cormier and Alexander Gustafsson. For one, DC's already beat him. He's the light heavyweight champion. But Gustafsson feels like he's tying up the division a little bit right now. So he kind of said, hey, if I'm going to fight, you know what? I actually like the Luke Rockhold fight. You know why? Because that's DC's teammate. Since I can't put these hands on Daniel Cormier, how about you come on up here, Luke Rockhold, and you can get these hands in the meantime. But as I said, Luke Rockhold's out with injury, so we could be seeing Yoel Romero move up. He's talked about this actually before his fight with Robert Whittaker, but Yoel Romero talked about a potential fight with Daniel Cormier. Now, in order to get to that fight, he might have to get through a #1 contender fight first, and I think that would be Alexander Gustafsson. Alexander Gustafsson is the guy that's had a close fight with John Jones, the GOAT, a close fight with DC, the GOAT. I know it's hard for me to tell which one is the GOAT, so that sounds a little weird, but yeah, man, I don't know who's the GOAT. I would probably lean toward Daniel Cormier because he's not suspended right now, but other than that, I mean, either way, Alexander Gustafsson put up a hell of a fight with John Jones and DC, and I feel like he's the rightful #1 light heavyweight contender. He's kind of in a situation that you see Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in, or some of these other fighters, where he wasn't able to beat the champion, but he's still a badass and has pretty much beat everybody else put in front of him. So with that being said, we'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys updated, but it looks like Gustafsson is open to a rematch, or to a potential match with Yoel Romero ahead of a rematch with Daniel Cormier. But if not, just real fast, if not Yoel Romero, there are other fighters that have been put on notice by Gustafsson, and he says it can either be Yoel Romero, Luke Rockhold, Shogun, or Volkan Ozdemir. Now, Luke Rockhold's injured, so the only 3 realistic possibilities probably to fight Gustafsson are Yoel Romero, Shogun, and Ozdemir. I would like to see that fight actually, but we have to wait for Volkan Ozdemir and Shogun. They're going to be main eventing UFC Hamburg at an upcoming UFC fight night later this year. And so the winner of that fight could very well be the #1 contender to face Alexander Gustafsson. If Volkan Ozdemir is able to beat Shogun Rua, he will still be in that top 5 of the light heavyweight division. Hell, he was the #1 contender not too long ago. But if that happens, then we could potentially be looking at Ozdemir versus Gustafsson. And if Volkan Ozdemir or Shogun Rua don't come out of that fight healthy enough to face Gustafsson, then we could potentially be looking at Yoel Romero versus Gustafsson. And I'm interested in that fight. 2 #1 contenders battling it out. Yoel Romero, #1 contender of the middleweight division. Alexander Gustafsson, #1 contender of the light heavyweight division. And Yoel Romero has had his issues with weight, so moving up isn't the worst idea ever. So hey man, I'm in. Let the full-time family know what you guys think in the comments about a potential Alexander Gustafsson versus Yoel Romero matchup. And if not Yoel Romero, what light heavyweight do you think should be getting that #1 contender fight? And as always, thanks for checking out this video. If you're new or if you're just slipper slacking on your pimping, make sure you hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell next to it so you're notified every time I upload a video. And if you want to help support this independent channel, you can either click the PayPal button in the description or you can go to patreon.com/fulltimemma and consider becoming a patron. I'm out.
Bye, Felicia.